So, hello. Good morning, everybody. I see a lot of people already joining. So we want to make a quick, maybe technology test. So could you please maybe make a short comment in the chat or put your hands up if you can hear us well? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you hear us? Okay, I see some hands are raised. So it seems the sound is good. Perfect. Then please, the ones that had raised them, please unraise it again so that we know that everything is fine. Perfect. See more and more people joining, already around 40 people. Wow, really nice for such a morning. So I think we give it maybe like 30, 40 more seconds until we get started, so that all of you can, make yourself comfortable, maybe grab a last cup of coffee, and then we will begin just very, very shortly. So, and please, all of you, if there's any questions or any problem you have, please as well use the chat, direct your question to us from the IMRP team, and then we can help you out as quickly as possible. So still some more people joining. Let's give it another, Dimitris and Claes, another 30-ish seconds. So good. Okay. But then I think we are ready. So again, a warm welcome. We are really happy that so many of you are here. I can imagine with the Christmas around, there's a lot of things that all of us need to somehow finish for the end of the year. So therefore, we really appreciate that you join us and take this valuable 1 hour with us around. As a short starting point, you see that we are a few people here today, and I will just very quickly start by waving in the camera. My name is Victor Rudolph, and I'm a bit your host today, so I will not talk much, but just at the beginning. And for the ones of you that don't know me, at IMRP, I'm on the one end the responsible person for our customer success team, but as well the person that coordinates our products. I'm the product manager, and I think that's as well enough for you to know from me today, because we have something I think really interesting to talk about. You know it from the topic of today. It's a webinar which addresses let's say the achievements for the development excellence, the topic of the role of IP questions in the phase gate model. And I can imagine that this is a topic that is somehow important for all technology intensive companies. And therefore, I'm really happy that we have two very competent speakers today in the call. I mean, on the one hand, Dimitris, very brief as a background for the ones that don't know him. He actually holds a Master of Science degree in electrical engineering from the Swedish KTH University in Stockholm. He has been working for a few years in Germany in the renewable energy sector, but then came back and worked as an examiner at the Swedish Patent Office. So really on the other side of the table, has then moved to ABB, where he both worked as an R&D engineer and project manager, but as well in IP matters. And now he is one of the founders of IMRP, so since 2013, and is currently the CEO and head of sales. Then next to Dimitris, we as well have Claes. I mean, I think the path somehow met in some way. So you as well were at the KTH in Stockholm. You have as well a Master of Science degree, but in mechanical engineering. And you have, I think, a quite substantial career already in the past with a lot of different important milestones, but I think most critical that you have worked in a few patent attorney firms, I think among others Brand, and then as well you were the CEO of Albins, which has become Sacco, and as well I think important that you are the head of the patent department as a Swedish patent office. And now since 2010, you are a strategic partner for the patent test. So warm welcome. Nice to have both of you here, and let's get a little bit more concrete. So first of all, for all of you that maybe are the first time in our webinars, you all have on the left-hand side such a control panel which you can use to interact with us. So if you have any questions along the way, please really feel free to ask them, and I will either try to ask you questions throughout the webinar, or otherwise we have at the end as well a Q&A session. Never, please, all questions, raise them here. And then it's a little bit of an expectation management. So what are we going to talk about today? There's a short introduction to both companies, and then we really go into the topic with the background, the challenges, how to solve in the use cases. And at the end, after some Q&A session, we as well have a short recap from IMIP about the year 2023. Good, but then very briefly, very short, I would like to introduce both of the companies for today. On the beginning with IMIP, I think you see it here. We were founded 2013, so really a milestone for us with 2023 because it's our 10 years anniversary. And we as IMIP provide a third-party patent handling tool, and there was a big focus on smart collaborative patent monitorings. And this is really something due to our background when we worked in the industry, where we really had the major challenges of somehow always working with emails, Excel files when we talked about patents with colleagues, which we want to solve. Nowadays, we are actually already available in 3 locations. So the headquarters in Sweden, then we have Germany, and we have Poland from our offices, and we are around about 30 employees with, I think, now more than 300 customers. And one thing I think which is very special with us, that we have a dedicated customer success team, which both has a patent knowledge, but as well as product knowledge. Then going over to patent test, we are nearly perfectly aligned. So founded in 2004, so meaning next year, there's the 20-year anniversary. So we nearly made the 10 and 20-year anniversary together, but let's keep that for the next year. And patent test is basically a European-based company for search or patent searches and patent analysis. We even have some additional locations. You see it in US, UK, Israel, and Sweden. And patent test has really a number of patent consultant and specialists. So both from the law firms as well as from really IP departments from the industry or even the patent offices. And patent test is very, very good in running different types of searches, film top rate searches, IP strategies, net landscapings, novelty searches. And without further ado, I would like to hand over now the word to both Dimitris and Claes. So the show is yours. And let me quickly give you the sharing options. Just a second. And now I think you should be able to share the screen.
Yes, I hope you all can see our screen.
Yes.
First of all, good morning, everyone, and Victor, thank you for inviting us into your webinar theme. And of course, today we are going to focus on, together with Claes, on the important aspect of technology development projects related to it, and see how you can connect IP into a technology development. The focus of today is to see how we can bring these 2 important, I would say, words into one, and show you how you can actually minimize some risks going forward when you develop that. And Claes, thank you so much for joining me and Victor in this very important topic.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And I believe that we all look forward to share our experience, I would say, with the audience. So before we start, we would actually like to ask you to either use your telephone and use the QR code that you see here on the left-hand side on the bottom. If you can't use a QR code, please go to menti.com and use the code. And this is just a warm-up. We want to see a little bit where all of you are calling in from. I'm happy to see that people are active, super good. So we see Northern Europe and Central Europe.
Yeah.
Super interesting. We will wait some more seconds. So let's see. Interesting. So also
outside Europe as well as attending as well.
Definitely. Super interesting. Okay, let's wait 10 more seconds, then at least we know how this is working. The whole idea behind this is to create a little bit an interaction with you. There will be some more questions coming out as we walk you through our presentation. So a little bit as expected, Claes. I think this is where we have most of our audience. There seem to be Central Europe and Northern Europe.
Yes, and some outside Europe.
Some outside, but it can't just be one with 3% would be my assumption.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So then let's go to the next one. So we would also be very curious about to hear more about what type of role you have. So please.
This will be interesting.
This will be very interesting because this is a little bit always the challenge. Who do we talk to? And as we are now in a digital forum, it's important for us to know. This is super interesting, Claes.
Yeah. Really? Oh, yes.
So maybe you will win. I was expecting the opposite here, but this is interesting. Okay.
Amazing. Good.
Perfect. I think this gives us a little bit the expectations,
yes.
And I think that our program will, I would say, fulfill everyone's needs of today. But
I hope so. At least I hope so. But
yeah, else feel free to give us feedback. We are open for that as well. But I think we are ready to continue. Thank you all. There will be more questions, so be prepared, and we will give you heads up. So,
well, I'm starting the session. Hi, I'm happy to be here together with you today. And now we are looking at a management team. You know, this is the crucial team for you to address. You as experts, you're experts in R&D, you're experts in IP, you know what it means, you know the value of IP, you know the value of new products and everything, but you have a management team. You have to convince them that to do the right thing. They might consider IP a cost rather than an investment, because you know that IP really is an investment. And being aware of this, that is your upper hand in this case, because at the later stage you should argue with them in order to persuade them to pursue the product that you actually want to do. There are quite a lot of challenges that you have to meet when doing this. And one of the absolutely major challenges is this. When you're working with development, the most common thing that you hear that solution is not good because it's not invented here, because everybody wants to invent anything and everybody wants to invent the wheel if you basically look at it that way, because there are so many technical solutions that are described, that are published, and that might solve the problem that you actually intend to solve. And you have to pay attention to this. So why should you actually invent the wheel twice? It's nothing to do. You shouldn't. And the culture of not invented here, try to get rid of it, because it is not beneficial to your company or to your organization. Now, when you are going to argue with the management team, you have to tell them that what we are doing and why we are structuring this is to, amongst others, to avoid infringement, because you always have to check for infringement when you have a new solution. Another reason might be to block others from using the super solution that you might come up with. And you can also inform the management team if they are unaware of the possibilities with the IP system, that this is actually something that we ought to use in order to both decrease our cost in the organization for the R&D, but also to increase the profit in the company, because good solutions that can be protected will always boost profitability in one or another way, and I'll be back to that. Then you might be curious, how do we solve it, and what is the essence of what we are doing? Well, this is a development process. And you know, it really doesn't matter if you're a startup or if you're a major company. You need to look at this anyway, because I've seen so very many, especially from university and college, startups having a solution already ready, and they come to me and they say, look, I have a solution, can we protect it? And in very many cases, a PhD would say to me, I know that this is patentable because I know every document in the whole world concerning this problem, and we are unique. And a very, very short search will reveal, no, you're not unique. A part of it is, but it doesn't pay the cost for patenting it, and you can't benefit from it in a business perspective. And that's why I mean that the development process would get rid of all those kind of problems and instead focus on a good solution which would be patentable, which would be profitable, which would give both lower cost and bigger profit. There are three stages. It's the pre-project stage, it's the development stage, and it's the pre-production stage. All of them are very essential in order to have an efficient development process. And you have to remember that this is the beginning of everything. After the pre-production stage is finished, you still have to be aware of what's happening in the surrounding world. You have to still monitor everything. You have still to follow the landscape and monitor what others are doing for several reasons. And I'll be back to the reasons later on. When you're in the development process, you start with the pre-production project stage, and the pre-project stage, it actually concerns more than one person. I would say that the feasibility check, which is the key and the essence of the pre-project stage, it involves research and development. It involves design, marketing, finance, production, IP coordinator, management to approve what's happening, and it might also involve you. Hopefully it does. And what do I really mean when I'm saying feasibility check? Well, actually, I mean something to establish what you want to achieve, because that is not always clear when you're starting a development process. Establish what you want to achieve, what presence rights do you hold, what licenses do you need, do you really need to develop, what risks are there, what markets do you want to market this on, and what infringement risks are there, because that would actually give the information that you need. And how do I achieve all this? Well, my solution is to do a state-of-the-art search. In the state-of-the-art search, you get other solutions that solves the same technical problem that you intend to solve, because there's a problem that you intend to solve, isn't it? It will reveal the technical strengths of the solutions that are available. It will also reveal the technical weaknesses of the solutions that are available. It will give the clearance risks for you, and it will show the actors in the area. I mean, if you have a solution, technical solution, in an area where, for instance, Microsoft or Apple is heavily involved, it might be so that you should be careful about going on your own. Perhaps the target there would be Apple or Microsoft instead. Now, having gone through all this and found out whether there is a good solution to already available or not, if there is not a good solution available, you will have an area to invent or to find a solution in. Otherwise, there might be solutions available in the area which you have searched. It might even be so that you might find an off-the-shelf solution just to plug in into your product. The feasibility check is what I mean, a check where you gather people from different departments to establish the differences between what your present product and the new version, establish how you handle those differences, and for instance, buying components on the market, licensing in or out rights that you need. You need a targeted price, you need a production planning for the targeted price, you need pros and cons in order to find the right solution. An example that we could perhaps discuss is a little bit about vacuum cleaners. Vacuum cleaners are developing all the time, and eventually at some point you need a new motor because the old ones are not doing the trick as you wish, and you need to enhance your capability to suck dust. When you have done the state-of-the-art search, you will find other solutions on two motors on vacuum cleaners, and you'd be amazed how many different solutions there are. And you might find that you don't need actually to develop yourself. There might be a motor just to fit into your design, and you adapt your design and continue. But this is not all. When you have reached to that point, sorry, I have to go back to this. When you have done all this, you have to make a decision whether you should go for your own development when it comes to the thing that you want to develop, or if you should stop and buy from outside. And some companies that we have been working with has introduced the stop and go toll gate in order to say, really stop to the project. And one UK company that we actually introduced this model to said that this was the most money-saving thing that they ever have done in their research and development department. So stop and go is essential here. And now we proceed to the next stage, the development process and the development stage. When you're in the development stage, you have to define, and I mean, now we are in the area where you are developing yourself. Define the new novel's features that you want, and find solutions to them. Now, when you have found solutions to these features, you do novelty search on each and every of the inventions that you have come up with. You do that to see whether it's patentable or not. Now, after you have found out whether it's patentable or not, you have to assess, should we patent or shouldn't we? Anyway, for some of the solutions, you will patent. For other solutions, you won't. But you are made clear to yourself which ones you would pursue with, which ones you wouldn't, because of financial reasons, because a patent should always pay its own costs and create profit to the company. Now, when having done this, you have the inventions, you assess whether you should develop in-house, whether you should license in rights in order to be complementary to the product or to the invention, license out rights because some of the patents might be licensable for others to license in, whether you should buy the components, whether you should produce it yourself, whether you should produce it outside your company. This is very essential. Now, having said that, we have to take into consideration that different companies has different length of development times. Some are very quick, a couple of months, others a couple of years. No matter what, in order to follow what's happening, you need to monitor each and every new feature that you have come up with. You have to monitor it because what's published today is filed 18 months ago. And to update yourself so that you're not ending up in problems later on in the development process, you need to follow that. And you're doing that through monitoring, which is essential in this case. Well, let's skip that one and go to this one. We have been talking about monitorings to follow competitors and follow technologies. Another thing that I would like to bring to you knowledge about is the patent landscaping. Patent landscaping will reveal to you what others are doing and what extent and where they are focusing, but you will also see trends. You will see if your trend on development are in the same directions as others or if it varies, and you can definitely see if another competitor would turn into another direction so that you have an early warning that this is happening. Monitoring and patent landscaping will also reveal to you the infringement risks that others has, because you will see what they are doing and you will be able to detect whether they are infringing your rights or not, so that you can actually earn some extra money on if they are infringing your rights. Now, when you have come this far, you're entering the pre-production stage, and you of course have to do mock-ups, you have to do pre-production planning, you have to assess how the production should be made, if you should produce it yourself, and not the least, you have to create a freedom to operate for the feature and put it in the way that you're using the feature in the production line or the production method, so that you're not infringing anybody else's right. And now somebody would say, freedom to operate, that's expensive, it costs very much money. Yes, it does. However, if you have followed this process, you have done your state of the art, you have done your novelty searches, you have done your monitoring, there's very little left for you in order to obtain freedom to operate for your feature, product, or whatever it is. So what you spent money on before, you will gain money on now. And this is very essential that you do it this way. However, now that we are in this stage, now when we are in this stage and you are ready to put the feature into product and the product into production, you mustn't forget to follow whatever you have done through monitoring, because every day new documents are revealed, so that you can take necessary precautions in order not to have some problems with the new precautions and new setups that will arise. You have to follow it also with pattern landscaping in order to, well, be aware of what's happening on the market and be able to act accordingly whenever necessary. Have you followed this procedure, you will lower your cost. You will definitely benefit from a better production development plan. And I would just give you an example, which is from my background. Normally in a development and research department, the manager comes to one of his developers saying, hey, can you have a look at this? Give me a report in a month. Well, says the developer, I will do it. And he will come back in a month with a report. Let's say a month is 175 hours, and each hour accounts for at least 100 euro an hour. That's 17,500 euros spent on finding a solution. That's more than, well, it's a state-of-the-art search would cost in the region of 10% of the time spent, giving all the necessary information in much shorter time and much more useful. And that's what I would like to say to you today. So, Dimitris, yeah, can you continue with
I will
put this into a tollgate model that is the essence of it?
Yes, exactly. No, very interesting, I would say, because in the end of the day, I would say this gate model that we will be talking about, I think, will really embed those things that you now talked about. Now, before we start and dive into the use case, me and Claes are very curious to understand how many of our audience now are using a phase gate model, just to get an understanding. It doesn't matter whether it's 6 months or whether it's 2 years or 2.5. It would be very interesting. Okay. I got a little bit scared, but it's nice to see. Let's see whether we will get this 50-50 that we discussed about here before starting it.
Yeah, it's roughly 50-50.
It's exactly 50-50.
Yeah, it's exactly 50. Amazing.
Now it shifted. Now it shifted. Super interesting.
This actually shows that there's quite a potential to improve in this case for the 58, now 58% success now.
Yeah, this is interesting actually. But on the other hand, I would say I'm not completely surprised on that.
Neither am I.
I think the ones that answered no are somehow following a process, but it doesn't mean that they maybe use a phase gate model. It could be that they're using the process that you described. But obviously now going further down this road, the whole idea now that I would like to share with you is what this is and how this could actually be tied into your product development process. So this is exactly, I would say, a translation of the process that Claes described to us, which actually is usually split up in 3 phases. I would say that phase 1 is what we call this idea, business case. Let's further develop our product. Once everybody agrees, you start the development. And then once you have done the development, you start to see whether you can offer to the market. And that's usually what we call the commercialization in it. Looking a little bit to that, and if you translate it into a gate model, the ones that are using it know this very well. In this use case, we look into the typical step that once you reach gate 5, that means that you start to commercialize your, I would say, technology development, and usually that's handed over to a product manager, and then you start to make serial production of your technology. And to be very honest with you, I think this is quite interesting to see that using this phase gate model will give you a nice holistic view, I would say, of the whole project. And I think this will also help you to slice down the different deliverables that you need to deliver. And just to mention, in this case study, we will just focus on the IP. Of course, a gate model includes everything from budgets, project proposal, different features, how to produce it, many more, of course, deliverables. But in this one case that we will talk about today, really be about what type of deliverables do you have, how can you obviously create these deliverables, and every time you pass a certain gate, you feel even more comfortable that you're going to the right direction, because exactly what Claes talked about, it is really about the freedom to operate. Can I offer this into the market or can't I? And depending on the obstacles, that of course might force you to navigate around it. And where I came from, we usually call it work around. And that means, okay, there is a obstacle, what does that mean? You could end up in maybe acquiring the technology, you could end up in licensing the technology, or you could also end up in creating a tailor-made solution for that specific thing. So there are many ways out of it. And of course, sometimes you also need to take the decision to stop. You talked about the stop thing, which can also happen, I would say. That's not a problem. If we then continue a little bit further down this, now the question we have is, how many of you, now the ones that answered the yes, obviously, how many of you have IP questions implemented in that phase gate model? That would be very interesting for us to understand as well. Before I continue, 100% yes. Don't know, interesting as well. No, fair enough. I completely get it, because it can also be that you have a project manager that is responsible for it, and maybe that is not your responsibility. The no, interesting, but I'm happy to see that the majority, from that perspective, at least has it.
And the other ones has a potential.
Yeah, and again, I strongly believe that if you don't have a phase gate model with IP questions, I assume that your IP department or patent lawyer is doing it, but of course not in this way where you have to pass the certain gates. But still super interesting that I would say 40% don't. And of course, and I assume that's why you all attended here today, to really say, okay, what could you do?
There's quite a lot of benefits to be found in having a structured way and using this kind of gateway models.
Okay, so 60-40.
60-40, yeah.
So let's assume now that you have created a proposal for your business, and you have created a steering committee group connected to it, you have your R&D group connected to it, and your project manager is about now to present it for the gate 0. This is a little bit the I would say, phase, we call it, or feasibility study. There are many ways of doing it, but at least before, I would say, you propose a project, I would say, do at least a first screening. It doesn't have to be completely in-depth, but it should really be connected to what you're about to develop. And I think that's very important, that you really analyze, how do we differ? What is the difference in comparison to the known art out there? And similarly, if there is a difference, how big is that difference? And also look into your competitors. What are they doing in this similar field, if this is something that you're competing in? And I think that is very important to have. And then you can do it in two ways. You can either activate the monitoring through specific keywords and competitor and patent classes, or you can also, execute a prior art search or a technical search. It may depend if you have already an invention in place, because usually when we call prior art, it could also mean connected to something. Usually at this step, we would highly recommend a technical search, because that's a little bit broader, because in this stage, you're not really ready where you want to go, because that will be defined according to this now process in gate 2. This is still like, what can we do? How is the landscape? Then, once you have passed gate 1 as well, and it has been approved, you have received money, and then you're now about to enter the development. And that means now that you will actually activate some R&D people working together with you to start to develop this certain technology. And most probably the gate 0 or G0 told you that you can actually go ahead. And that's a little bit why you end up obviously in gate 2. And that, I think, is quite interesting to mention, that in this gate 2, there are actually 3 documents that you need to start to prepare for. The one, of course, is this prior art search report. I'm using now that word because in this stage now, you most probably have identified which features are relevant for this development. Likewise, you also know which aspects you would like to protect. And then thirdly, you also have an idea of where or which markets could be relevant for you. And therefore, looking into these different aspects, it's very important that you start to collect this information. So looking a little bit to the first documentation, I would say you have to go through all the documents, everything, and then start to really understand how they could impact your business. Hopefully, none of them will be like super crucial, or I know that IP people tends to prefer interesting, because you have to be careful how you do this assessment. But you should always have in mind that what is important though is that every time you look into these documents in your team, you do the technical assessment. Nobody expects you to read any claims. Nobody expects you to understand what does this protection mean. In this step, you use your team to do the technical assessment. And then you make it super simple with categorizations, and in one bucket, the ones that are not interesting, and the other bucket, the interesting ones. And then you create that list, and simultaneously create a third bucket, and that actually are probably your patent applications that you are filing, because they must probably be in the process of being filed into the patent office. So that's the one document that we call the prior art search report. Then, obviously, when you create the strategy, the IP strategy report for your product or development project, it's very important that you have some content in it that explains to your, I would say, group and the steering committee of what type of protection are we aiming for. It can be patents, it can be trade secret, it can be publish a paper, because all of these are actually IP. Everything doesn't need to go to patents, but patents is obviously a very strong instrument to use. And that's super important, that I would really suggest that you look into. And again, based on the document that was found, or the documents, this will help you to detect how your competition is doing this. And most importantly, what strategy do you have on the top layer in the company? And then with these things together, you should be able to create these type of, I would say, decisions. What is also important to have in mind, and I think Claes touched upon it, is obviously if you are doing this together with a partner, maybe a consultancy firm, I don't know, maybe a vendor producing part of something, you need to really see in this agreement between you who owns what IP. Perhaps you share the IP, then it's even more important that you talk to each other if something has been detected. Maybe you are the fully owner of that. Super good. Go ahead. You don't have to discuss anything with you.
But you have to agree before.
Exactly.
Not after, before.
No. Yeah. And of course, in this IP strategy report, it's super important that you also put in all the IP you have created, regardless of it is a patent, utility model, design, trade secret. You will not put in that document, but that is also something you need obviously to keep in the project. And likewise, continuously, don't stop to encourage your team to continuously look for new patents, because every time they solve a problem, I would really say that this is something that they need to consider whether they should be protected or not. And of course, in this strategy report, last but not least, consider which countries are relevant for your business. It's one thing where you tend to sell it. It's one thing where your competitors are. It's another thing where you manufacture the device yourself. But it's very important that you take that into this type of document. Now, the third document I would say that you are about to create, this is what we call the clearance report. And in that clearance report, as the word, and I think Claes, you mentioned about this clearance constantly, all these documents that I refer to in the bucket of interesting, you did the technical assessment, you hand that over to your lawyer, and then they do the legal assessment. What does that mean? Actually, in a nutshell, it means that the lawyer will look into, is this patent granted? Could it become granted? Where have they protected it, or where could it be protected? And those things will obviously be given by your lawyer and back to you, and give you like a preliminary, I would say, judgment on whatever has been seen so far. Important to have in mind, seen so far is literally 1.5 years backwards. So there is still 1.5 years where things could pop up. and applications could become granted, and suddenly from no threat could become very hostile. Exactly. So then you have the three documents that I would say you can bundle into your gate 2, and then I think you're ready to go one step further. Now, once you go to gate 4, because that's again where IP will be discussed, through gate 2 and gate 4, there is a monitoring that is constantly capturing documents. That exactly also what Claes talked about. You just continue to rank your documents. Nothing will change for your team. Obviously, at this stage, you just need to update these three documents because, again, when you look back 1.5 years, maybe a new threat appeared that was hostile, or perhaps a new player have appeared. So it's actually very fruitful to have this type of assessments together with your team, and then you update on the one hand the prior art search report. Perhaps you need to revise also the strategy report around it. And then last but not least, if you again identify something that needs the attention from a lawyer, you include them directly. Because now what I think is quite of interest here is that this second preliminary version of clearance starts to go now what we call this final stage. Not really, but it's about to. Because if you go one step up and look at the gate 4, this is really the end of what we call the development. And this means obviously that once they allow you to continue, you will enter gate 5. And that's where you hand over the entire development into what we call production. And from that point on, it means that you will start to commercialize it. And at that step, of course, it's also important to have in mind that you will again go through the documents that could have been captured between gate 4 and gate 5. Usually, you very seldom detect something crucial where you need to put the stop button. That should have obviously occurred between gate 0 and gate 2. But again, it can happen. And actually, my experience from my previous life was that we found documents that the patent office intended to grant, which didn't make sense at all for us. And therefore, it's also important that you also look into that, because that angle is completely different. That means that you can also stop, I would say, bad patent applications to become granted, because in the end of the day, you have that responsibility as a company to stop these type of patents. So usually what could appear in gate 5, that this patent that you consider to be, sorry for my expression now, not good or shit, somehow it managed to pass through the patent office and they want to give it thumbs up. And that usually could be required that you start to act. And this is usually what we call this opposition that could be handled. And there are many ways of doing that, but usually this is what happens. With that said, once you pass gate 5, I would say the ownership moves from the technical team to the product management team, product owner. There are many names on that, and that's usually it. Now, you don't stop with the monitoring, I would say. What you usually do at this step is that you hand over the entire monitoring to the product manager so they can continue. Because in the end of the day, if you have created IP, you should also stop others. We talked about it in the beginning. You need to block others. So if you invest money in your patent portfolio to create IP, they are the best, I would say, police officers out there, because they go to exhibitions, they go everywhere, and that's perfect to get that insight and back to the lawyer so you can take legal actions. So in the end of the day, what I'm trying to show you here now is that, and I think also what Claes tried to tell us, is that if you make this process that you require some deliverables, it's actually not that difficult. I understand that IP is a quite complex material, but the deliverables is something that you can expect from every R&D person in combination with a lawyer, because the technical assessment I expect the team to do, the legal assessment is usually your patent lawyer, and you together should be able to get this clearance report. And I think that's exactly what we talked about, by combining the prior art search with obviously the monitoring, you come to this perfect idea of freedom to operate.
Yeah, and if we try to conclude what we have talked about for the latest 3/4 of an hour is do it right from the start. That's important, because a bad start, it's hard to make up for. And the feasibility study, it gives you actually the start that you deserve. And you deserve the best, that's for sure. Take all the IP measures that you can, because they will help you. They will protect you and they will block others from the solution. And if possible, you can benefit from selling licenses, or for that reason, sell the whole product to another company. You gain more or less freedom to operate by following the tollgate model or phase-gate model, because you have done your state-of-the-art, because you have done your novelty searches, because you are monitoring what others are doing. The remaining part to achieve a freedom to operate is very minimal. And why shouldn't you do it that way? Because you save the money. It also enhances creativity in the organization, because the state-of-the-art gives other solutions. Other solutions means that there's new ways of thinking about how to solve the problem, and to beat the solutions that are found, your researchers and developers will be much more creative. So finally, continue monitor and check the landscape after having finalized your design into a product and launched the product, because there are opportunities again to earn money, to block others, and to use the IP system for the reason that it's there, to protect your investment.
So with that said, we will hand the word over to Victor again. Thank you from our side. So Victor, over to you.
Perfect. Well, and thanks, Claes and Dimitris, for this interesting, inspirational talk. I think it was really nice to have some of both sides at the beginning, a bit more the general top level background and theory, and then really like a hands-on example of how this could be implemented in a phase-gated model. And therefore, if I just take over, let me just share my screen again, just a short second. So in the meantime, for everybody else, feel free to, yep, I think there we go. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat. If you have anything specific, both to Claes or Dimitris, or maybe just to one of them, or more in general, so please use the chat function. One question that I have, maybe directly at the beginning, before we see what else pops up, is because we saw by the poll that around, I think it was like 40% have no phase-gate model implemented. So do you have maybe any good takeaways or any good guidance if you want to now decide, oh, this seems to be important to ensure freedom to operate, how to start implementing it? Because I can imagine if you directly start with still 6 gates, it can be a big project. So any good ideas on how to smoothly integrate such a process in the company?
Well, the essence here is, of course, knowledge, to know what freedom to operate is, and to tell and discuss about what costs to not have a freedom to operate would generate in the company. Imagine that you have developed a feature, component into a product, and when it's ready to launch, you realize that, no, I can't launch this because there's a right that is blocking me. And even worse, if you have marketed it and start commercializing it, and somebody turns to you and say, you're infringing my right. And you know what happens when that occurs is that you disrupt all creative work in the company. Everybody gets scared. What does that mean to us? If it's a small company, it's crucial. Major company, they can live with it, but it disrupts the developments for the future because everybody is concerned about the infringement. So I would say discussions on what freedom to operate means, and safeguarding that you always are discussing the things around freedom to operate already from the very beginning. And that's easily done by taking the precautions that we have discussed during, for instance, the feasibility check.
Okay, thank you, Claes. Maybe one more question which popped up was a bit like how to get as well the R&D side more committed to this one. Do you have any good ideas on this?
I can take that one, Victor. I think that's the most relevant question here in the room, because I usually tend to hear, that how can we make, engineers to be, innovative and find more patents. We talked about it, me and Claes, in the morning, that engineers are used to solve a technical problem. That's it. Which means that whatever problem they face, they will solve it. The problem we have as engineers is that we think nothing is patentable. And I think the only way to understand what is patentable is to actually look out there. So in order to get engineers more part of this process, give them technical inflow, because we are curious. This is one thing we at least have and we're proud of. And by giving them that information, then we start to talk, but they do like this, we do like that. And that, I think, is how you can get them more engaged in the process, I would say.
Yes, and that's what we call enhanced creativity.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Well, then thanks for the answer, and as well to the whole audience. If you have any further questions, feel free to as well share that afterwards, maybe just with a private message to us. We are always happy to answer. We now just have a few minutes left, so I would go to the let's say last part of today. So on the one end, as you may know, we have now somehow with this part launched a new series of webinars, which are really very much focusing on more major underlying use cases for technology intensive companies. So this was now more a bit of a let's say a theoretical part in a quotation mark. So with the next webinar that we will hold, we will be very much hands-on on how to let's say really work with patents in a software tool to ensure knowledge sharing and these kinds of things. So therefore you see here the title of the next webinar is Unlocking Innovation, building your company's patent and technology database with IMIP. And the key thing here is really to set up a knowledge database. So how can we do that? How can we somehow structure all the important patents that we are finding, for example, with prior art searches, for example, with the weekly monitoring processes, and how, as well, very important here, how can we very easily make this data accessible? If you now really say, I want to only know the most critical patents, how can you within 5 seconds find them, instead of making a broad lookout? So therefore, have on the one hand a look at our webinars page on our homepage. Now we will announce it at the beginning of the year, but we'll as well do that in an email, so you will get the update there, and feel free to register. And then the very last slide, as well, more a generic point, is a bit our recap. And I think for us from IMIP, it has been a very nice year 2023, and we had really a lot of different major milestones. I think we can talk most probably like an hour here, which we don't have. So I just thought I will take a few example cases that I would just like to highlight. And first of all, just from IMIP side, of course, the strategic collaboration in general with patent tests, because we have a lot of companies that not only have the software, but as well need some support in searches, monitoring setup. So I think that has been really nice to have a good strategic partner. At the same time, you see at the bottom right a nice picture. We had the first time actually 2 user day conferences, which is somehow as well the result, because we have now exceeded the 320-30 customers. So there are more and more customers, and we want to really connect with you again after the Corona times. So that's why we had now 1 conference actually in Sweden in May, 1 in September here in Cologne, and we will keep these 2 parts as well going forward. So please feel free to already block some calendar time, the customers for May and September. Then going along, I think the major update from the IMAP platform side is our AI pattern categorizer, which as well can be really a game changer for this gate phase model. Imagine the times are limited, and you go in at the beginning of the week, and IMAP directly tells you these are the 10 patterns you have to look at for freedom to operate. These are the most critical ones, and the other 50 you could do tomorrow, next week, or whenever you have the time. I think this was a major step forward to unload you as the end users and really make you spend the time at the right place. Then last but not least, exactly with 11 o'clock, we of course, even from the customer success side, did a lot of work in order to help you further. Just one example is that we have introduced a few automated guided tours. So for example, for all new customers, new users, when you log in the first time, we automatically help you and show you where you find things, so that it's much easier and faster for you to get accustomed to IMAP. And of course, 12 months is a long time. There's much more, but I think it will make things too big for today. And therefore, I just want to say a big thanks to all you. I mean, the majority that are with us today, our customers, for all the support, all the nice collaboration. And we from IMAP really look forward to 2024. And yeah, have a nice Christmas time and a good transition. And let's stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor.
Bye.
Bye.